Hello and welcome to the Women in Tech powered by Bird & Bird series. In this podcast series, we will hear interesting stories from interesting people leading the charge at the forefront of innovation. My name is Melissa Murray and I'm a partner in our intellectual property group in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. I'm also a member of the firm's wider tech and comms and retail and consumer group. I'm delighted to be joined today by Nancy Gleason, who is a professor of practice, political science and director of the Hilary Ballon Center, all at New York University Abu Dhabi. Hi Nancy, and welcome to our session.
Hi Melissa, it's great to see you again. Thank you for having me.
As we've outlined, you're a professor of political science and director for teaching and learning at New York University Abu Dhabi. Can you tell me about your career journey to date and how it led you to the position you're in now?
Sure. So as I look back, like many people who advance in their career, I'd say more than any one job title or role, I'm basically a disruption expert. And every experience I've had professionally has informed my understanding of how disruption, whether that be climate change, COVID-19, or artificial intelligence, impacts our systems, both social and ecological. So career-wise, I'm a skills expert. I'm a skills person. And that is not something you set out to learn in school or pursue a career in. Rather, it's something that comes from developing that skill of reflection and through reflection. So I started working in international aid recruitment as my first major job. And here my task was to match resumes to required skills set out for project proposals and for international development. And from there, I had the opportunity to go on to graduate school and earn my PhD. And I studied international conflict resolution negotiations, as well as international environmental policy. But back then, technology was relatively peripheral to these issues, and it's simply not anymore. So as I began to teach and be a university professor, I learned from my undergraduate students, and I shifted my focus. I became interested in how we construct knowledge, who gets to say what matters, and how we adjust to incorporate things like the Sustainable Development Goals, employability, and yes, generative AI skills. So now I write, teach, and research about the future of work and the future of skills in the corporate and university setting, and I love it.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. How would you describe your mission within the education and AI field and what you've set out to achieve?
Sure. So I think the mission is probably two-part, right? We all work for organizations, and the mission of NYU Abu Dhabi is to advance global leaders, our students, as they move out into the world, who are culturally aware, self-conscious, and willing to be leaders in society that contributes to the United Arab Emirates, the GCC countries, and the world. So I work to contribute to that mission. But in addition, I believe that there is real danger of manipulation from artificial intelligence. And my personal mission is to help people, both formal students and more mature learners, develop lifelong learning skills so that they can avoid being manipulated by the powers that generative AI and other forms of artificial intelligence can unleash. Similarly, this is just one disruption. So I would also be considering that this is compounded by things like climate change and those who need to migrate because of natural disasters.
It's very interesting. I really feel like you're at the forefront of all of what the UAE is looking at the moment. And I do wonder, the UAE is really on this great mission to teach our younger population on how to be very socially aware of the risks and the issues, but also embracing it and not to be scared. I wonder in some jurisdictions if they have a bit of a theory around avoidance rather than embracing, but learning from it and then working out how best to use these new tools that are being developed. Do you have any thoughts around what you see as the main opportunities and challenges around the automation economy in terms of maybe what might be the main opportunities and challenges for potentially women and other underrepresented groups?
Different cultures and societies will respond to the automation economy in different ways. This is in part due to their infrastructure, for electricity, for the population's access to devices, and the cultural norms around how much this will spread to everyday use for average citizens. So we should expect the opportunities and challenges to roll out differently in different economies. So economically, we have increased productivity, we have lower costs, and we've improved efficiencies for many tasks being performed in the workplace. We're also anticipating it to create new jobs in development, in manufacturing, and in maintenance of automation technologies. And here in the UAE, this definitely applies to space exploration and the legal infrastructure around space and the external economies it produces. And these are all great opportunities. There are, of course, challenges. Not everyone in the world is connected to these technological capabilities. So we've created a new kind of inequality with their emergence. And here I'm thinking specifically of ChatGPT, but there are, of course, there was life before ChatGPT and there is life after it, where some people are able to produce faster, more efficiently, better, because one, they have access to these tools and the bandwidth and the electricity they require. And two, they've been taught how to professionally manipulate them to do their jobs more efficiently. So we have a challenge of making sure that some of our colleagues and some of our youth don't fall further behind as a result of the creation of these technologies. The main challenge for women is interesting because the circumstances are different for women than they are for men. And this is because of the way STEM has evolved over the last 100 years in particular, where a lot of the people creating this technology are not women. And so the things that these technologies could be deployed to help are not necessarily for women. And furthermore, some of the research is showing that as jobs are automated, more of these will be automated associated with female work rather than work that is associated with male work. An example I often give is the garment industry is highly likely to be fully automated in the next few years, and it is almost exclusively staffed by women and girls. And so we need to find alternative livelihoods for them, and this is a major challenge of our time. It can be done. We just need to be creative and put our minds to it.
That's amazing. I also wanted to ask you in relation to the changing workplace scenario with the future of work and what you might see on the horizon in relation to the way that we work in our offices or at universities and the way we teach, and what sort of future horizon scoping do you think, things that are coming up in the future?
Sure. I always love this question because there's something new every day. But I do believe there are major challenges and opportunities ahead. The future of work will not look like what it does today. These are changes that we've not seen before, but these are changes that will come in our lifetime, in our professional lifetime, for those of us who are middle-aged or younger. And so an example I can give is an AI tech firm called Figure announced a major robotics breakthrough in which they trained a robot to make a cup of coffee. Not a big deal that a robot made a cup of coffee. The point is how the robot was trained. The robot only received 10 hours of watching videos of humans making cups of coffee. So what this means is that we can now scale the training of robots in order to produce fleets of robots that can learn how to do things simply by watching humans or others do them. This fundamentally changes a lot of tasks that can be learned by watching how to do them. And when you combine technologies like robotics with smart computers, with the 5G or 6G network, potentially with quantum computing, the pace at which all of this can happen picks up. So when we think about the horizon of the future of work, it is likely that a lot of people that are working today will not need to work tomorrow. And it's likely that if you do stay in the firm you're working for, the actual tasks you perform will be different. So the example I like to give there is I'm a professor. And a lot of people think the main thing that I do is grade papers or grade assignments, whatever they may be. And I will be shocked if I'm still grading papers 4 years from now. That's not a good use of my time. The best way to do that is to have an AI grade the paper relative to the criteria of the rubric that is assessing that assignment. And then I can spend all my time working with the students on their feedback and how to improve and where they went wrong and where they can do better. That's a much better use of my time for their learning. And I think you'll start to see these kinds of changes in the workplace. And then it's up to people to be willing to let go of those tasks that identify them in their career roles. And this is the part that's scary for employees, right? For faculty members who think that they are the only ones that can assess student work in their area of expertise, this is a scary change. And there are changes like this in almost every role in the world. So what do I see on the horizon for the future of work is everything will change. Now, some firms will make these changes abruptly, and that won't feel good. Firms that make them slowly might slowly go out of business. Right? I don't necessarily think you'll see these things happening overnight. It might take 5 or 10 years for a firm to need to wind down. But if you don't adjust, that's most likely what your outcome will be.
That was amazing, Nancy. Thank you for that. And it reminds me of when I was at a conference in October in Paris, and there was a gentleman there from OpenAI, and he was talking about how in the coming years, it's very unlikely that we're going to have an iPhone 25, and certain different things in terms of the technology that we currently use will be gone. And therefore the tasks, and you pointed out the tasks that we currently do in our everyday jobs, which are probably not helping us be very efficient, are going to go away. And I've had a number of conversations with young people who are doing law degrees, and they're a bit worried about the training contracts and the current tasks that trainees do when they're training to be a lawyer could very well be picked up by AI. And what are they going to now do is they're going to be a future role for young lawyers. There will always be jobs for lawyers. So I always tell them these are just new tools and new ways of doing our work, but there will still be jobs. They'll just be different jobs. And maybe we will be all far more efficient, and we will be always checking the AI and the computer software things and the outputs that it gives to us. But you still need that human intervention. I don't think that the computers are going to take over our lives. That does lead me into the next question around careers and what you would recommend to other young females who might be looking at their future careers and might want to follow a similar trajectory to you and the way that you've done business, knowing that they won't be able to replicate what you've done in the past because the future jobs are going to look so different. So do you have any advice for those young people that might want to eventually end up somewhere similar to where you are in your career, but maybe getting there a different way?
Sure, absolutely. I think we all have to follow unconventional or non-traditional trajectories from here on out. Whether you're in technical and vocational skills or you have a terminal degree, there's just too much disruption in the world to think that we would set out to do something at 18 and to do it in a specific place and still be doing that 20 years later. So my advice is to be curious, to practice taking initiative, and constantly reflect on how that goes for you, refining your methods. And these are all characteristics of lifelong learning. And lifelong learning is a key to the future of work. It's being willing to constantly pick up new skills, learn new platforms, communicate with new types of things. And so being curious, taking online courses, reading things you haven't read before, spending more time with elderly people and young people are all important for the sustainability of your professional trajectory. And my other piece of advice is to network, network, network. Find people outside your field of expertise and get exposed to new ways of doing things and new ways of thinking, because you will need to be able to transfer these into whatever job you have quickly once they emerge. And so as you meet new and different types of people, you can start to have new and different types of conversations. And yes, listening to a podcast like this is a great way to start doing that. So my advice for those aspiring to want to be in leadership roles related to technology is to just keep learning new things as often as you can, and then reflecting on how that knowledge impacts you and your capabilities.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Because some of the advice that I've given to our junior lawyers is that, AI, it's still a computer software program at the end of the day. It doesn't have emotional intelligence. Some of the outputs are incorrect, especially at the moment when we've done any sort of testing. So you have to really have quite cluey critical thinking skills and really sort of skill up now on all the things that AI won't be able to do and cannot do because they're not human and they don't have that gut feel if something's wrong. And the very convincing tone that some of the AI comes back at you. I've done some examples and I've looked at it and gone, I know that that is wrong. But if I didn't know the background experience, I've been in law for 20 years now. If I didn't have that background experience, I would look at that and go, you know what, that sounds really right to me. And so I'm teaching my young lawyers that that's the bit that we need to continue to work on. And that's our value add, is being able to go, no, that's not correct. And that's not the right research. And I don't know where it's pulling its training data from and how it got to that result, but that's actually not correct. And we shouldn't be following those sort of things. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Nancy, it was so great to hear about everything that we've talked about today. A big thank you to all of our listeners as well. Please look out for more great content coming from our Women in Tech powered by Bird & Bird series soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.